Keep in mind this timeline is all just my opinion and is basically a combination of a bunch of my theories. If you don't understand why I believe a certain thing, I probably already made a theory on it, which you could probably find in my FNaF Theories playlist, or I will make a theory on it in the future. Enjoy the timeline. William Afton was a man who had trouble having real feelings. He cared about his family as much as he possibly could, which wasn't really the amount that most people would. While William did care about his family, one reason he actually started a family, one of the main reasons probably, was to be viewed positively in the eyes of a public, to seem successful. He kind of loved his family, but not really. He felt like they didn't appreciate what he did for them, and that made him kind of neglect them, especially his oldest son Michael, who felt like no matter what he did to get his attention, William would never give it to him. That caused him to mistreat and antagonize his little brother, who, along with his sister, got way more attention than him. That and some feelings he genuinely did have are the reason William was so angry when his wife announced that she wanted a divorce. At first, it really just pained him that she was ruining his image. Fuming with anger that his wife was leaving him, he forced his child, Elizabeth, to lie about her own mother in court in order for William to gain custody of all three children. Mrs. Afton is forced to move into a secluded area in a clearing surrounded by trees near a bar named Junior's. But eventually, she's just too devastated about what has happened, losing custody of her kids, and she unfortunately kills herself. Losing Mrs. Afton actually really affected William. He ended up taking her house, meaning he had two houses, and buried her in a clearing nearby instead of giving her a proper funeral. Despite not really caring all that much about her before, Mrs. Afton's death utterly destroyed William, mostly because it kind of made him realize how lucky he actually is to have a family. While he doesn't necessarily love them, he really doesn't want to lose any more of them. But Mrs. Afton's death really did affect William. It caused him to become an alcoholic, being a regular at a nearby bar Junior's, and this led to William Afton's downward spiral, leading to the rest of the events of the entire series. Welcome to my ultimate 5 Nights at Freddy's timeline. Hope you all enjoy.
Dreadfully, terribly, something is amiss. But don't you mind the feeling, it's all made up in your head. Destiny's melody calling out to me. But what I need from you is to come closer to the edge.
William Afton's best friend is Henry Emily, a man with a wife and 2 kids, twins Charlotte and Sammy. William and Henry had been friends for a long time and had their own vision for children's entertainment. It started as just a singing show with a guy in a bear costume, but it quickly evolved into something even bigger. Henry ended up building 2 Springlock animatronics, which were bots that had mechanisms so they could perform as robots or be worn as costumes. Then together, their vision became a reality in their restaurant, Fredbear's Family Diner. The 2 main animatronics in the diner were Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. Henry and William often performed as the animatronics themselves, with Henry's choice being Fredbear and William's being Spring Bonnie. Fredbear's Family Diner opened in 1982 after William Afton's wife died, and William had still kind of been going crazy. William and Henry, after the great success of Fredbear's Family Diner, decided to start their own company called Fazbear Entertainment, with which they make a new restaurant called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in 1983. Freddy still included Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, but the place functioned as a pizzeria restaurant rather than just a diner, and it also included numerous spin-off animatronics from the Fazbear Entertainment Fredbear and Friends cartoon. These animatronics weren't Springlock suits, but were just animatronic entertainers: Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza really ended up resonating with William's kids, but the Bite Victim had been most fond of Fredbear. The Bite Victim had plushies of all 4 main animatronics, as well as Fredbear, who had by far been his favorite. William decided to take his own approach to children's entertainment. Fascinated by Henry's technology, William decided why not make another company solely based around his own technology called Afton Robotics. With this company, he created another spin-off restaurant with new characters called Circus Baby's Pizza World, with the main mascot Circus Baby, and other animatronics like Ballora and Funtime Foxy. Circus Baby was made especially for Elizabeth, and Ballora was a way for William to cope with the loss of his wife. He used his grief and anger regarding her death in the process of building the animatronic, and somehow this actually causes Ballora to act like William's wife, which confuses him. Something similar even happened when he was making Circus Baby, but in a different way. See, with all his anger after Mrs. Afton's death, William was essentially going insane. Sometimes he even felt like he wanted to make other people hurt the way that he was hurt. He was getting urges to kill people. This mentality and all the emotions coming with it basically caused Circus Baby to go berserk. William noticed that there was something wrong with it, but with his current mentality, he didn't shut down the project, but instead just instructed Elizabeth not to go near Circus Baby. Circus Baby would count the number of kids in the room, waiting for there to be just one so that she could use her claw that had originally been for scooping ice cream to instead scoop Elizabeth, who didn't listen to William. William's murderous mentality was what caused it to act this way, and when Elizabeth was killed because he didn't try hard enough to keep her away, he was furious. He shut down Circus Baby's Pizza World the day that it had been opened, using the excuse of gas leaks. His extra anger after the death of Elizabeth caused some kind of entity to be created, one that took the form of Fredbear but with a shadowed coloring, Shadow Freddy. A lot more happens after the death of Elizabeth. William realized that if Circus Baby could go berserk, then so could any of the animatronics, and William knew that if he didn't take action, the same thing might happen to his youngest son. To try and solve this problem, William steals technology from Henry and inserts them into his son's plushies, then brings him to another house that he owns. Keep in mind that with the success of all the great restaurants and the singing show, William is pretty much rich, so he owns multiple properties, two of which he uses to trap his youngest son into nightmarish experiences to try and make him terrified of the animatronics. But this doesn't work well enough. His youngest son still loves the characters for whatever reason. William's failure to stop Elizabeth from dying really sent him into spiral, and he started drinking more and more, even going as far as to cause a scene at Junior's, getting him banned from going there again. After Elizabeth was killed by Circus Baby, Henry had been worried for the well-being of his daughter Charlotte, so he created a new animatronic, the security puppet, to act as a security system at Fredbear's. He connects the security puppet to a specifically green-colored wristband in order to protect whoever wears it, and he gives it to Charlotte. Because William had lost his wife and daughter and was worried he would lose more, he started seeing Henry in a whole new light. He didn't believe it was fair that his family was falling apart while Henry's was thriving. He was jealous. One night, Charlotte was being bullied by a couple of kids who locked her outside of the Fredbear's building and blocked off the box that the security puppet was in so that it couldn't save her. Charlotte was pained that everyone was having a great time and she was out there alone. She was unable to do anything, and no one was there to help her. A drunk William Afton drives to Fredbear's that night and finds Charlotte, only to strangle her to death and drive off back home. The agony of Charlotte's death also created the being of Shadow Bonnie, a character who throughout the series is there. That's his ultimate role. He's there. And he helps set up Happiest Day in one aspect, which he wasn't really important in doing. Anyway, while that was happening, William's youngest son had been visited at his window by Shadow Freddy, who lured him out of his room and to Fredbear's. Because it was dark, the kid couldn't tell that Shadow Freddy wasn't a normal animatronic. He believed it had just been Fredbear in the shadows. Shadow Freddy brought him to Fredbear's, where the kids saw the dead body of Charlotte in the dumpsters. It's important to remember that Charlotte and the bite victim were close friends, so when the bite victim sees this darker version of the animatronic that he has loved for over a year and believes it killed his best friend, he is understandably distraught. When William finds him gone from his room, he's absolutely furious, and the next day when they go back to their house by Fredbear's, the crying child is even more scared to be closer to Fredbear's. But William, as punishment for sneaking out, locks the bite victim in his room. But what he also does is set up numerous Fredbear plushies all around their house and all around Fredbear's, the path to Fredbear's, and he put cameras in them to spy on the bite victim, and even talk through the plushie, trying to make sure he steers clear of the animatronics. But on the bite victim's birthday, things take a dark turn. Michael knew that his little brother had now been terrified of the animatronics, and decided to invite his friends to his brother's birthday party at Fredbear's. When there, they all decided to wear masks of the animatronics, knowing how scared he is, and they bring him up to the stage where they shove the bite victim into Fredbear's mouth. Prior to this, Michael had used some mechanical skills he'd picked up from William to adjust Fredbear's jaw so that the bite victim would be able to fit. But when he's actually in Fredbear's mouth, the pressure is too much for the jaw to handle, and it snaps shut again, crushing the skull of Mike's little brother. The bite victim didn't die immediately, but he was immediately rushed to the hospital. The day after the bite, Mike visited his younger brother in the hospital. Mike had felt extremely guilty. All he wanted was to scare the bite victim. He was just jealous that he'd gotten more attention and just wanted a little payback, but he never meant to kill his brother. When he visited his brother, he tried apologizing to him, knowing that the bite victim might not have even been able to hear him, but he tried. Meanwhile, the bite victim had been saying goodbye to his plushies. As it turns out, although not speaking before, Charlotte has been inside the Fredbear plush all along, keeping an eye on the bite victim, and now that he was about to die, she promised him that she would put him back together, and the bite victim died. After Michael killed the bite victim, William hated him even more than he did before. William didn't want Michael to even live in his house with him anymore, so instead he kicked him out and just left him off in the house where he tortured the bite victim with the nightmares. This was now Michael's house. Even though Michael was only 16 at this point, he wasn't looked after by William anymore. But that's when William remembered something. When he was keeping an eye on him, the bite victim interacted with a girl about his age with pigtails who said that the animatronics had recently been moving around at night, and that they hide your body if you die. William doesn't understand this at first, but now he was curious as to what was going on. After his son was killed by an animatronic at Fredbear's, and a girl was found dead outside Fredbear's, he was approached by the police, which caused Fredbear's to understandably get shut down. The police also informed William of the circumstances regarding Charlotte's death. Charlotte's body had strangely been found hidden behind a dumpster with a security puppet. It's possible that's where the rumor came from. Maybe people believe that the puppet hid Charlotte's body. But then William looked into what else had been going on and found out that the puppet animatronic actually came to life at night. This led him to believe that the spirit of Charlotte could have actually been inhabiting the puppet animatronic. He felt like that was absurd, but he wanted to know if it could have actually been true. He wanted to experiment with the concept of possession. At this point, William had lost his whole family, and he basically had nothing left to lose. After the loss of Charlotte, Henry was... his daughter died, so obviously he was really upset. And he was kind of going into madness himself, and his wife left with Sammy. Because, she couldn't really stand him at this point either. After the bite of 83, the Springlock animatronics were deemed too dangerous to continue being in use in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, so they were retired. To replace the Springlock suits, costumes out of cloth rather than metal, costumes of Spring Bonnie and Freddy, were used instead. William decided to open up a new Fredbear's Family Diner, but he used the Freddy Fazbear designed and glitch trap looking costumes instead of the Springlock suits because of the Springlock cancellation. But this Fredbear's location was not successful. It almost completely failed. With the Springlock suits being retired, William used the opportunity to use one to individually lure 5 kids: Susie, Jeremy, Gabriel, Fritz, and Cassidy, who were all friends of the bite victim too, into the safe room at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, stuff them all into suits which would cause the wiring to kill them. He did this to experiment with the concept of possession. The puppet was found next to Charlotte's dead body and ended up moving, so he believed that maybe the spirit would follow the flesh and also the pain. If the missing kids were killed by the wiring of the suits and died in proximity with them, then their spirits would follow the flesh. The spirit would lead into the suits they died in, especially because the suits are what killed them and caused their pain. The missing children incident results in the second Fredbear's being shut down, as the character of Fredbear was ruined first, and now Spring Bonnie was associated with the missing children incident. More on that in a second. And it works. He finds that the animatronics are actually possessed by the spirits of the missing children. This makes him want to experiment with the souls of these children. He believes that if he could take hold of the haunted metal of the animatronics' endoskeletons, it could be the key to eternal life for some reason. I don't know why he has that thought, but whatever. But he decides his first move should be to move Circus Baby to a facility under his house to experiment on her, since Elizabeth was killed by her and probably now contains her spirit. He does it, but not before the law catches up to him. See, when killing the 5 kids, he was rather sloppy and the security cameras caught him, so he was arrested. The issue was that the bodies of the 5 missing children were never found, so they couldn't prosecute William because they technically couldn't prove legally that the children had been dead. So William was free, even though everyone knew that William did it. After the missing children incident, Charlotte and the bite victim try to work together to set up his own happiest day so they could set everyone free, but he fails, which ends up getting him stuck in the Golden Freddy suit, which is already inhabited by the 5th missing child, Cassidy. The puppet enlists the help of Cassidy to try and set up the pieces for the bite victim to have his happiest day and set himself and everyone else free. They manage to set the pieces, but the bite victim isn't ready to rest yet. He first needs to get his revenge on Michael. Strangely, evidence seems to suggest that it takes a whole 2 years for blood and mucus to start leaking out of the eyes and mouths of the animatronics. This leads to Freddy's being shut down due to health violations. Fazbear Entertainment actually found the bodies after this happens, but decides to cover it up because, they wanted to avoid more bad PR. Since they believed these animatronics to now be ruined and unable to be used again, they are later used for parts at a second, larger Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location. This bigger Freddy's, which was 2 years after Freddy's closed, is actually the same building as the second and significantly less popular Fredbear's Family Diner location, and it was now repurposed for the second Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Funtime Foxy was repurposed at this location to be one of the animatronics in the gang of the toy animatronics. The security guard for the first week this Freddy's location was open was just a random guard, but the second guard was William Afton in disguise. The Funtime Foxy animatronic was also torn apart and put back together by kids, and they just kinda left it like that, and he was renamed into The Mangle. After William was accused of being responsible for the missing children incident, William was voted out of Fazbear Entertainment, but when this new Freddy's location opens, he sneaks in using a fake name, Dave Miller, and works as the security guard. He uses this position to get a lay of the land, switches to day shift, and then murders 5 more kids wearing the golden Freddy suit this time. After killing them, he returns to the pizzeria with the intention of destroying the animatronics and collecting their haunted endoskeletons, but they had been under the protection of the puppet. The next guard is Jeremy Fitzgerald, who was attacked by the toy animatronics that have now been possessed by the spirits of the new dead children. The new dead children's bodies are then found scattered around the pizzeria, which causes the restaurant to close. Before it closes though, the phone guy promises that when the next Freddy's location opens, that he will become the night guard. He also says that there will be one last birthday party hosted the next day before the location closes, and that Jeremy will have to be the day guard to keep an eye on the animatronics. On that day shift, Jeremy is attacked by the animatronic Mangle and is bitten on the head, causing major damage to his frontal lobe. He miraculously survives the bite, but this event comes to be known as the Bite of 87. This incident resulted in the permanent shutdown of the FNaF 2 building and the banning of animatronics moving around during the day, being restricted to only move around at night. The toy animatronics were scrapped due to faulty functions and for being responsible for the bite. After the location closes down, Michael Afton enters the location as the guard to watch over the closed building. Using the name Fritz Smith so as to not be associated with his father, he guards the place because he knows William to have been the murderer and wanted to make up for his past mistakes by stopping him. So he follows him to FNaF 2, but fails and is fired on his first day. After the complete and utter failure of the second Freddy Fazbear's location, Fazbear Entertainment has gone almost completely bankrupt, but they couldn't let the franchise die. Without money for a new building or new animatronics, Fazbear Entertainment reused the building from the first Freddy Fazbear's location and the original animatronics as well. They reconstructed the building and repaired the old animatronics with new designs as well. Golden Freddy and Spring Bonnie were stored in the now discontinued safe room, and the puppet had also been left behind in the FNaF 2 location. Now that the animatronics weren't under the protection of the puppet, William now has the perfect opportunity to destroy the animatronics and take their endoskeletons. So what does this genius do?
Let's see what this genius does.
He waits 7 years, as you do, but I'll get back to that in a bit. So in 1988, only 1 year after the second Freddy's, Fazbear Entertainment opened up the third Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Surprisingly though, this Freddy's manages to actually do well against all odds. The phone guy works as a security guard as 6 years go by, but the restaurant does struggle in terms of business. As time went on, less and less people were comfortable with returning to the restaurant, especially since Fazbear Entertainment didn't care enough to actually clean the restaurant, and there were many hygiene concerns. Less people came to this Freddy's locations over time. But for the most part, it was still successful. But from a business side, behind the actual public image of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was failing. It wasn't a problem of money, it was a problem with Henry. After everything that had been happening over the past 10 years, by the time of 1993, the last year it was open, Henry wanted to be out of Fazbear Entertainment. So he tried to sell the company, but it was failing on the business side of things because no one wanted to buy the company or the building. Because of that, it was announced that Freddy's would close at the end of 1993. Near the end of the year, in late October and early November, the phone guy decides to leave the job since Freddy's was closing soon, and on his last week, he records messages for the next security guard, who ends up being Michael. However, despite working here as the guard for 6 years, this dumbass manages to die on his second last day on the job. Talk about bad luck. Anyway, Mike acts as the new security guard in this location under the name Mike Schmidt, avoiding his father's last name and instead using what might be his mom's maiden name or something, or just a random name he made up. Mike makes it through 7 days and ends up getting fired. Only about a month later, this Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closes. Henry makes a statement that these characters will live on in the hearts of children and then disappears from the story for the next 30 years. 2 more years go by. William turns the facility underneath his house into a testing facility disguised as a rental service owned by Afton Robotics called Circus Babies Entertainment and Rental. He has built 2 new animatronics, Funtime Freddy and a new Funtime Foxy, and these animatronics were specifically designed to capture and kill kids in the private parties where they are rented out. William also alters some aspects of the Ballora and Circus Baby animatronics to add these specs to them as well. He wants to experiment more with soul metal, so William enacts his plan. Returning to the now abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, William uses the ghostly being of Shadow Freddy to lure the animatronics to the safe room so he can destroy them. He collects their endoskeletons and returns to Circus Babies Entertainment and Rental. There's one room in the facility called the Scooping Room, and William uses this room to melt together all 5 possessed endoskeletons from the FNaF 1 animatronics, melding them together into the Remnant amalgamation. Remnant is what he calls the melted soul metal. He puts the Remnant amalgamation inside the mechanism called the Scoop Machine, also known as the Scooper, and he then takes Ballora, Funtime Freddy, and Funtime Foxy and brings them to the Scooping Room. The Scooper is actually a Remnant injector, and William uses it to inject Remnant into all 3 of these animatronics. But William made sure that these spirits could not escape the metal. William actually put pieces of his own body into the Remnant, making sure that he was keeping the spirits in there forever. He manipulated these spirits into doing his bidding, and they didn't really know an issue with it because their minds were split up between 4 separate objects, or 5 if you include Bonbon, and they couldn't really think straight. With full intention to return to Circus Babies Entertainment and Rental to experiment on the Remnant with himself, William goes back to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza to seal the safe room. Prior to this, William had informed Michael that his sister was still here, still restless, still conscious, underneath their house. Knowing Michael was probably going to end up dead, he wanted to see what the effects of Remnant on a human could be. He wanted Michael to get scooped to see if the Remnant could actually make him immortal. But he would never get to see. You see, what William didn't account for was that the agony of the spirits had still been inside the suits. He recognized that the spirit followed the flesh and the pain, but he didn't know that the pain could manifest as its own being. They trap him in the safe room, and William hides inside the spring Bonnie animatronic. Believing he was safe, William laughs in the faces of what had been left of the children he'd murdered a whole 12 years before now, not noticing the leaking roof or the water dripping down into the springlock suit, loosening the springlocks and killing William Afton inside. But Henry had been there. He saw what William did, and he knew what he had been doing. He knew about the spirits, he knew about everything. And when William was killed, Henry sealed the safe room, knowing full well that William would be restless too, and that he couldn't ever let William out of the room. Another 2 years pass. Michael had been delaying the inevitable for the past 2 years, but he finally decided it was time to visit Circus Babies Entertainment and Rental. He actually landed a full job there so he could explore the location and find out what had been going on. The Circus Baby animatronic, who unbeknownst to him had contained the spirit of his own sister, believed that Michael was actually William Afton. She manipulated him, lied to him, and got him to trust her. But all the while, Baby had actually been combining her own endoskeleton with the endoskeleton of Funtime Freddy, Foxy, and Ballora, creating a tangle of wires named Ennard. Ennard wanted nothing more than to escape this underground facility and believed that a human body would help them do so. And so they ended up getting Michael scooped, climbing inside his body and using it to escape. But as it was leaving the rental facility, it started to notice that this body had been faulty. Ennard moving around inside Michael's body had been pushing all of Michael's blood and the few organs he had left to be pushed up against Michael's skin, causing his body to become deeply bruised to the point that it had become purple. Despite all of this, Michael was still alive, though his body didn't really realize that at first. Michael's body was essentially rotting, but William had been right all along. The Remnant was keeping Michael alive, even while Ennard was inside him. While there had been too much Remnant inside Michael for it to have been good for him and he was slowly dying, the Remnant had kept him from being dead even from just the initial scoop. Without the Remnant, he'd have been dead. But Ennard, knowing it had been drawing too much attention, abandoned Michael's body and escaped into the sewer. As Mike was dying, his consciousness was brought into the remnant itself, where Michael interacted with all of the missing kids. He realized that they had been lost, their spirits were lost. The animatronics inside Ennard were basically mindless animals. Michael was actually able to help them put the pieces of their spirits back together. In retaliation, the children kept Michael alive, saving his life. Meanwhile, Ennard had been given a new view on things because, well, they realized who they were, so now they were more sentient than they were before, and they wanted Baby out. The missing kids booted Baby out of Ennard. While the new leader of Ennard had been the body of Funtime Freddy, creating the amalgamation of animatronics known as Molten Freddy, Circus Baby returned back to Circus Baby's entertainment and rental. She retrieved her own body, or possibly a duplicate Baby animatronic, and rebuilt herself using parts from around the facility. She rebuilt her chest with the lights that were in her gallery's control module. She fished the lobster claw out of the chest of her original body and attached it to her hand, and a lot more to create the new animatronic known as Scrap Baby. The Remnant managed to heal Michael's body, meaning he obviously wasn't a walking corpse anymore, and he actually managed to get on with his life, possibly getting a wife, maybe even having a child in the form of Vanessa, though I'm not sure I believe that, but he moves on. A whole 26 years go by without incident. But as we know, something else happened to happen. Some absolute geniuses thought it would be a good idea to make a horror attraction based on Freddy Fazbear's Pizza for the Spookfest of 2023. The place would be called Fazbear's Fright, the Horror Attraction. The makers of the attraction would return to the old FNaF 1 and 2 locations, retrieving items to make the place feel authentic. Michael, seeing this, gets Vietnam flashbacks, but elects to ignore it. After all the trauma of his past, now being 56 years old, he believes there was nothing more to do. But the bite victim is not happy with this decision. The spirit of the bite victim believes that Michael just doesn't care anymore. So what does he do? He gets his revenge. The bite victim places Michael in the same position that he had been all the way back in 1983, 40 years ago. He alters Mike's bedroom to look like the bedroom of a child, and gives him nightmares about the nightmare animatronics, torturing him with the curse of his past, reminding him of everything Michael caused and what he needs to do to fix it. This curse seems to lure in the being of Shadow Freddy, who enters Michael's nightmares in a corrupted form of Nightmare Fredbear, simply called Nightmare. Nightmare makes Michael's night terrors even more chaotic. The entire experience of the nightmare really reminds Michael that a lot of this had been his fault and he had to fix it. So he goes to Fazbear's Fright, the horror attraction. He works as a security guard there, like old times, where he gets a children's activity workbook based on the security logbooks that had been made back when the original Freddy's locations were open. But the people working on Fazbear's Fright find the withered Spring Bonnie animatronic in the FNaF 1 building and bring it to the horror attraction to act as the place's very own animatronic, not knowing that it had actually been William Afton, who had now become Springtrap. But Michael knows. After surviving for 6 nights at Fazbear's Fright, Michael decides it's finally time to put an end to this once and for all, so Michael burns down Fazbear's Fright with William inside. As he leaves the location, William emerges from the rubble. Barely still able to move since the suit was all banged up, William was able to return to an old Freddy's location and find parts to rebuild himself, and he became Scraptrap. The puppet, who had also been in the fire, also survives, only to be captured by a black bear named Lefty. After what Michael did, the bite victim realizes that Michael really does still care, and is finally ready to rest. But he can't rest without his friends, the missing kids, and they are still trapped inside Molten Freddy because of William. So the bite victim puts the pieces together and stays attached to Michael. But where has Henry been all this time? 30 years go by, and he's done nothing. Well, it turns out that Lefty was actually his doing. See, since Fazbear's Fright, Henry realizes that everything really does have to end, so he comes up with the nonsensical plan of burning 2 characters who just survived a fire, and a few characters who are claimed to possibly burn in fire, and burn and kill himself in the process so we can't find out if it works.
You stupid!
What a genius! But hold up, let's roll it back for a second. All this time, Henry has been working on a plan to lure all the animatronics to one place to destroy them all and release the spirits. But when Henry learned that William had been back, his 80-year-old ass thought now was a good time to finally enact his plan. So he repurposed the original Fredbear's Family Diner building, turning it into the first Freddy Fazbear entertainment property in 30 years, and names it Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place. Michael finds a job there, which wasn't intended, but Henry knows that it fits well with his plan and that Michael would want to be here anyway. Molten Freddy, Scraptrap, Scrap Baby, and Lefty, with the puppet inside, make it to Freddy Fazbear's pizza place. Henry makes the greatest but also most useless speech in the history of the world, but in the context of FNAF 6, without help wanted and security breach, the ending is absolutely legendary. But during the speech, he tells his daughter to rest, but to rest with the kids that she's been protecting all this time. But we know she's not resting if those 5 kids don't. But the bite victim, the kind soul he is to his friends, offers his spot in Happiest Day to Cassidy. But Cassidy is now attached to William and is keeping his spirit in his own personal hell, and she is not letting go. The bite victim offers to let him be tortured in hell and watch over him, but Cassidy doesn't let go. She persists, keeping him in his ultimate custom night. But William doesn't quite stay there, and neither does Cassidy. Not to mention the rest of the kids. Charlotte, the bite victim, Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz, Elizabeth, none of them are free yet either. But that's gonna wait for 2 theory videos I have coming up, and once those and a few other theories are done, there's gonna be a part 2, where we talk about the lore of Help Wanted, Special Delivery, and Security Breach. I'll be honest, I have no idea when the second part of the timeline will come out. It could be in a month, it could be the anniversary of Curse of Dreadbear, the anniversary of FNAF AR, the anniversary of Security Breach, or even in a year after we've solved the Lore of the Ruin DLC or something. I honestly don't know. It could be soon, it could be in a while, but for now, this timeline is gonna have to end right here. I hope you guys enjoyed my timeline. There will inevitably be at least one thing you disagree with, probably more, but even if so, I hope you enjoyed the video and recognize the effort I did put into it. I feel like the most interesting part of FNAF lore is just the fact that it's so vague, and while the timeline is kind of simple to put together nowadays, all the details to make it an actual timeline are more of inferences than real theories or objective facts, and inferences were pretty prominent in this timeline. But the vagueness of the series makes for so many people having different ideas on theories, some questionable, some amazing, some possible, and some factual at this point, and that's why it's hard to please everyone with the timeline. But in the end, I'm proud of this timeline, and even if you disagree with it, I really do hope you enjoyed this video. But if you did enjoy, make sure you do leave a like and subscribe if you want, as I worked really hard on this timeline. I didn't really upload that much in the week before this is coming out because I've just been so focused on it, but my uploads should hopefully be more regular now that this is finally done. But if you guys are watching the premiere as it comes out, I'm actually going to be live streaming through the entirety of FNAF 1 later on today, and possibly more after I beat the game too. That stream will be at 4 PM Eastern Standard Time, so if you can, be sure to drop in. But until then, I hope you all have a great day and enjoyed the video.